Welcome, everybody, to the 22nd episode of Stories from the Last Territory, a podcast that covers the golden years of wrestling in Puerto Rico. My name is Luis Cuevas, better known as the Caveman, and I'm your host for this trip back in time to the greatest feuds in the history of Puerto Rico. If you like what you hear and see, please subscribe to the YouTube channel or in audio at Spotify as Stories from the Last Territories. This is the only bi-weekly English podcast that covers the wrestling era of the golden years of wrestling in Puerto Rico. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about the career of Juan Rivera, better known as TNT or Savio Vega, to us, to the United States fans, and his debut and his first feud in Capital, and how this is the perfect example of how to make a star in the least amount of time when everybody's involved to make it happen. And TNT became a sensation in Puerto Rico. Savio Vega became possibly one of the biggest stars in the shortest amount of time compared to anybody else in the history of wrestling in Puerto Rico. To make matters easy, when we refer to Juan Rivera, just going to say Savio Vega or TNT. That way it'd be easier for everybody that's listening. It's interesting that he started in the wrestling business, not as a wrestler, but as a security guard in Capital Sports Promotion in 1983. Working under his uncle for Capital Sports Promotion. He wanted to be a professional wrestler while also practicing the martial arts, and he's a legit martial arts expert. I think he's a black belt in Taekwondo, and he even teach to some people, that like Hermes Ayala, a famous reporter from Puerto Rico, and so and so. In 1985, he decided to become a professional wrestler, and Capital Sports Promotion debuted him in a TV taping under a mask, under the name Inferno, facing Hércules Ayala in the TV tapings in Cataño. As was the custom in that time, when somebody saw a promise or somebody with a lot of promise, they would send him out to the different territories for him to gain experience and that way learn the business and then come back to the main territory. Seeing that Savio Vega has some promise as a wrestler, he was sent to two different territories in the United States and Mexico to learn more about the wrestling business and to gain some experience and to, like everybody say, pay his dues, of course. The first territory he was sent was to Mid-South territory under Bill Watts, territory that covers New Orleans, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and where many stars came about, like the Junkyard Dog, Jim Cornette, the Midnight Express, and many others that made Mid-South Territory their place where they gain experience in the professional wrestling. He debuted under the name of El Corsario, and he was managed by no other than General Skandar Akbar. Something interesting, or a little tidbit, was that he debuted under a mask that was going to be used later by his manager, El Profe, once he returned back to Puerto Rico. He had a nice run in Mid-South, considering he was really green, debuting in the month of August. I think he was only like 21 years old when he started wrestling in Mid-South territory. The gimmick was that before his matches, he would break a 2x4 with a kick, and he had some pretty good matches against the likes of Eddie Gilbert, Wendell Cooley. He had a couple matches against Bush Reed, Jake Roberts, The Nightmare, and different wrestlers that were competing in Mid-South territory in the fall of 1985. And he also, during that time, had a couple shots at the Mid-South tag team titles alongside with Dutch Mantel against Art Perez and Wendell Cooley. After finishing in Mid-South, he was sent to Mexico to work for the UWA in the Toreo de Cuatro Caminos, making a tag team with Maelo Huertas, better known in Puerto Rico as Invader 4 or Invader 1's brother. And they work as a tag team called The Corsarios, and they had a short but good feud against Los Brazos, Brazo de Oro y El Brazo, that eventually led to a mask versus mask match in August 3 of 1986, where they lost the mask. After that run, it was time to come back to the mainland, up to Puerto Rico and Capital Sports Promotion. There's a movie here in Puerto Rico that came out this week called Superestrellas de la Lucha Libre. And a couple of years ago, all these legends met in a round table. And in that conversation, it was revealed that Invader One was the proponent of this new character that they gave to Savio Vega or TNT. The character was called TNT, where he was a martial arts ninja. And using, right, of course, his experience or his background as being a martial arts expert. I don't know if in the United States that was the case, but here in Puerto Rico, during this time of 1986, 1987, we had all kinds of ninja movies, and they were super popular. And it was American Ninja, Ninja Domination, Revenge of the Ninja, and many more. I mean, it seems like every other week there was a new ninja movie at the video stores or at the theaters around this time in Puerto Rico and showing in the local channels. So a character like that was perfect for what was going on in the island with this type of fandom that was going on with all these ninja movies. And I remember as a kid, you can get the little stars and the little nunchucks and everything. So it was like a big time ninja time around this time. Invader One asked Savio he would shave his head, and they start using paint on his face that, according to Savio himself, Chiqui Star was the first that painted him, and he had like the little Road Warriors thing, but in the middle they had the TNT logo, like he was Dynamite. And he debuted with a manager that supposedly came from Guadalajara, Mexico, but he was a local wrestler named Angelo Rivera or Angelo Pantojas, and he was called El Profe, and he had this briefcase that the wrestlers would use, and he said that he had brought this monster ninja to take over Puerto Rico, and El Profe had a nice mask. He had like a tuxedo all the time. He was dressed to the nines, and he had, he talked like Mexican, and he was dissing down Puerto Rican people and so. And it was like the perfect combination of TNT and Profe. They just worked together. You just fit like a glove. You got this Mexican manager bringing this ninja wrestler to the island, and and it just clicked. His first match was televised on October 25 of 1986 in the morning show, facing a wrestler called El Zorro, where Hugo and Joaquín Padín start saying that they were surprised that this TNT guy not only was from Puerto Rico, but that he was this great martial arts expert, and they start putting him over big time. I mean, they were like salivating, like, wow, this guy, look at him, look at those sidekicks. My God, he looks amazing. Look at his Cobra Crush. I mean, they really did a good job of saying this guy is special to the fans that were watching him for the first time in Puerto Rico. Later in that show, for the first time, an interview with Profe, introducing them, and Profe stating that what they want, what are the goals, and setting up this new character. And it was $1 million segment, establishing him, that he wanted the titles, that he wanted to dominate, that they were not there to make friends, that they just have one purpose, and that was to win the Universal Heavyweight title. And TNT, he just looked like $1 million. He will cross his arms and just have this stone face looking at the cameras. He won't speak, and he was just a Profe talking for him and putting him over and saying, this guy is a black belt. He's a machine. He has no pain. You can do anything to him, and he will not back down. I mean, they really did a good job with Profe, especially putting over how great this guy was. And Hugo was like, yeah, this guy is great. I mean, that match, we couldn't believe the talent that he has, And that was the first week. The second time was on October 26th against perennial enhancement talent Sabu. And again, Joaquín Padín and Hugo Sabinovich helped establish TNT like a legit and solid wrestler that could really take the title away from Carlos Colon with his finisher, the Cobra Crush. What they did in the announce table, setting him up as this big star that, that was debuting, this wrestler that really could, take over the wrestling in Puerto Rico. Profe, they elevated Profe too, are saying, look at him, he's dressed to the nines. They come in, they do the job, and they move on. So it was great. Finally, on November 1st, 1986, he's the guest of the Chiqui Star Sports Shop, and you can see all this. You can go to Armstrong Alley and check his playlist of 1986, starting in the TV show of October 25th. And I want to thank Armstrong Alley for providing most of the content that we're going to be talking here in this podcast. On November 1st, 1986, he's the guest of the Chiqui Star Sports Shop, the main segment for the rule breakers in the island of Puerto Rico, where he welcomes Profe and he says, you know what, I have a lot of respect for you. I'm impressed by this talent, and they keep putting TNT over. This guy is amazing. I mean, I can't believe, you know, where you found him. And, you know, they're discussing how great, you know, TNT is and how much damage he could do in the island. And to the surprise of everybody, Profe in that little interview said that TNT will not wrestle anymore on TV, any arenas, or anywhere until they receive a title shot against the Universal Heavyweight Champion, Carlos Colon. With Chiqui and Profe was saying, that's great. You know, Carlos' days are counted. And the look, the makeup, and Profe right away made TNT into a star. And it only took this 3 weeks, and everybody was a buzz about, wow, who is this guy? You know, who is this great wrestler? His third match on the TV show on November 9, this was taped before he, Profe, made his famous comment that he was not going to wrestle, was against the man that we got to know in WCW as the man of 1,000 holes, Dean Malenko. I know, it blew my mind too when I saw this match. Later that day, it was announced that on November 15th, in the TV show, the main event was going to be a match for the Universal title between TNT versus Carlos Colon, taped at the TV tapings the Wednesday before the show aired in Catania. That match in the evening show, the November 15th TV, man, if you have never seen this, stop this podcast, go look at it, November 15th, because it will blow your mind how great this angle was, what a great job the announcers did. Everything about this was perfect in creating this star, this wrestler that was a legit main eventer, and it put TNT right where he was in less than a month. He was already a main eventer. This was a fun and great match, made better by Joaquin Padinijo. What a job calling this match. What impressed me the most was how solid TNT was, even when he was still basically a rookie. And that he was just, 22 years old in 1986, a baby in wrestling terms. The ending came when TNT put the Cobra Clutch on Carlos Colon, and you see Carlos Colon trying to escape, doing the Bret Hart move in SummerSlam 96 on WrestleMania 8, but he knocks the ref, and Carlos kept trying to get out, but could not. And then, you know, he finally gets out of the Cobra Clutch, but Profe came in and hit Carlos with the briefcase, and TNT again put the Cobra Clutch. Well, Joaquin Padinijo was almost crying, saying, oh my God, Carlos, bendito, va a perder el título, he's going to lose the title, bendito, pobre Carlos, he cannot escape. I mean, you could tell Joaquin Padinijo was almost on the verge of crying, and the ref called the belt, and it looked like TNT was the new champion. Profe asking for the belt, but the ref would not give him the belt and keep asking TNT to wake up Carlos, who put the old Alka-Seltzer in his mouth while fans are going crazy. The announcers, please wake him up. It's been going for minutes. Oh my God, he's going to die. He has no oxygen. Please wake him up, please. But once TNT didn't get the belt, they leave Carlos Colon without waking him up. Well, Joaquin is almost crying and asking Hector Moyano, who was his partner, please go look for Victor Jovica, the master of the sleeper hold, to see if he can wake up Carlos. Carlos cannot be like that. This whole thing, oh my God, please, he's going to die. Look at him. He's puling. Oh my God, he's bubbling. He's going to die. Please, go, Moyano, go look for Jovica. Jovica finally comes in, and Joaquin is like, yes, Jovica is here. But Jovica is like a turtle into finally he keeps trying to wake up Carlos Colon with Joaquin screaming, please wake him up. It's Carlos. He's going to die on us. Finally, Jovica wakes him up, and Joaquin's like, milagro, it's a miracle. Carlos Colon woke up. he's alive, he's breathing. And, it was just so amazing. And Carlos Colon is so struggling with the stuff coming out of his mouth. And what a great segment. I mean, it is awesome. Sorry if I got carried away, but it's just amazing how it was, with Joaquin Padinho, screaming and shouting and feeling like all the fans that were there in Catania that night. And it just set up TNT as this badass rule breaker and that could beat Carlos Colon. And Carlos Colon was weak. And I got to say this, and this is something that this is all happening between one of the greatest feuds in the history of Puerto Rico, the Carlos Colon versus Stan Hansen. During that time, they had time to create a star, create a new feud, and just make a bunch of money with this angle on TV. It's incredible. I mean, they don't do it like this anymore. The little details, everything that went through this whole month was amazing. After the match, they have Hugo Sabinovich talking to Jovica and saying, Carlos is alive thanks to you. And Jovica saying, these moves are dangerous, the sleeper hold and the Cobra Crush, you can die from them. And, can you please explain, what the Cobra Crushes do to a human? Yeah, and, Jovica is explaining, it cuts the oxygen to the brain and it just kind of knocks you out, and if you do not wake up in time, you could lose your dive and you could create damage to your brain. I mean, they explain all the dangers of the Cobra Crush and saying, Carlos Colon is hurt right now, and explaining, that it might take him a while to be back to the normal Carlos Colon that he was before TNT did this move to him. Incredible storytelling. It was amazing. Hugo Sabinovich did a recap of the match and announced that for the Thanksgiving card, November 22nd, it was going to be for the Universal title in a vengeance match, Carlos Colon versus TNT at the Roberto Clemente Stadium for the Universal title. And they had an interview on the show outside the studio with Carlos Colon alongside Victor Jovica. But first, Carlos Colon's like, I want to thank Victor Jovica for saving my life, for waking me up, because I don't know if I'll be here if it wasn't for Jovica, and saying that, that TNT, what he did to him and Profe, they're going to pay for it, that they were not trying to win a match. They were trying to take him out of his career and everything that he has worked so hard for all these years in professional wrestling. And he mentioned that Capital Sports had added a stipulation that in this match, El Profe was going to be in a cage 15 feet above the ring to make sure he does not interfere like he did in the first match for his briefcase, and that he was going to teach TNT a lesson. El Profe mentioned that, hey, it doesn't matter. This machine is going to take you. He already proved that he can beat you anytime, that you couldn't escape the Cobra Crush, and he's going to do it again. Finally, the match on Thanksgiving, it was not a sold out, but it was still a lot of people in that car in Roberto Clemente Stadium. The match is in YouTube. You could check it, but not with the original announced team. You could check it out. Just put TNT versus Carlos Colon, and you're going to find it. It's November 22nd of 1986. It was not the original announced team. Profe is doing commentary, and he's giving a little background on the feud, what was going on this time, because the commentary was a couple years after the original match. But the match was another banger, with TNT showing how much of a prodigy he was at that time. In the final moments, TNT pushed the Cobra Crush on Carlos, and Carlos tried all the moves, and it looks like he couldn't escape. Carlos will be gone away from the title. But the fans are screaming for Carlos, and you feel the people like, yeah, come on, Carlos, come on. Carlito, Carlito. And then, as a last resort, Carlos had to use a low blow to escape. And Profe on commentary is going crazy, accusing Carlos of everything under the sun, that he's a cheater, that he had to do everything at that time to try to retain his title, and, well, everything else that you can call somebody. That led to Carlos putting TNT outside, and they had an awesome brawl, putting blood on TNT, and both fighting to a count out, and with a wild brawl with wrestlers trying to split them, and both attacking everyone, fighting all the way to the dressing room. The promo, Profe cut on the Saturday evening show was gold, with Prophet basically saying that Carlos is a coward, that he had to cheat to skate to defend his title, and that in Caguas on December 6th, they were going to be a winner, and that winner was going to be TNT. In the interview on the November 29 early show, Carlos recognized that TNT was, Hugo, he was a little bit stronger than he thought, and that even when he tried to kill him, he developed a little respect because TNT showed him that, that he was tough, but that he was going to finish the job and he was going to show him a lesson. Prophet in his interview mentioned that even with me at 15 feet, you could not defeat him. You could not defeat him. And what's going to be your excuse now? You have me in a cage, you couldn't beat TNT. What are you going to do with me in the corner now? And you have no excuse. In the evening show, Hugo questioned Carlos about the hunger TNT has, and that he never stops fighting, and that, he looks like an unstoppable machine. And Carlos, I gotta admit, TNT is younger, he's hungrier than I am, but I am a willy veteran that is going to teach him a couple lessons. This match also ended in a countout. Sadly, the feud was put in the back burner, with Carlos Colon dealing with the Stan Hansen feud and everything that entailed. And Capital Sports Promotion, what they decided to do was kept TNT strong by giving him victory over all kinds of babyface, winning the Gillette Cup tournament in 1987. And he also had a little mini feud with the Invader, where TNT attacked his ex-partner, Maelo Huertas, on TV, and Invader was looking for vengeance. But TNT was kept strong. They had a last match on April 18, 1987 at the Iran Bison Stadium, where Carlos Colon prevailed. After this, TNT was becoming incredibly popular. I mean, he was like a rule breaker, but he was super popular with the fans. Everybody was in the ninjas craze, so everybody was turning towards him. So Capital Sports Promotion did what he had to do, and they turned TNT babyface, splitting him from Prophet, and the angle was that Prophet was stealing 50% of his earnings, that Prophet was blaming him for the losses of the tag team of Pogo, and TNT turned babyface and became super popular. In my opinion, you could say the third most popular wrestler. Some might say the number 2, but he quickly became the favorite to become the face of the company in the 90s. He had great feuds as a babyface against Mr. Pogo, the Ninja Express, against Abdullah the Butcher for the North American Caribbean titles. He also had a great feud with Hercules Ayala. He had a super short but very good feud against Sadistic Steve Strong. And he was on the verge, and many people, and I know a friend who says, this guy was the man to lead Capital Sports Promotions into the 90s and be the face of the company. And we're going to be discussing that in the second part of this podcast in 2 weeks, where we discuss the second part of the Carlos Colon versus TNT feud that for many people was the last hope for a new era of wrestling in Puerto Rico. And for many people, they might say that wrestling never really recovered from what happened in that feud in the 1990s. Meanwhile, Carlos Colon embarked in the finish of the Hansen feud in 1987, and later what became the most successful feud between two Puerto Rican wrestlers for the next 2 years, the Carlos Colon versus Hercules Ayala that we covered in a previous feud. But the debut of TNT, the way he was portrayed, the way he was set was amazing. And in 1 month, Capital Sports Promotion created this huge star that to this day is one of the most popular wrestlers in the island, in the history of the island. And it took 1 month because everybody was involved in it. The announcers, Profe, you could tell they invested in this character and they took care of all the details, and Carlos Colon put him over, and everybody, Hugo, Joaquin Padin, everybody involved made in less than a month a new star that made money for Capital Sports Promotions for the next 6 or 7 years, and that he made money all around the world for the next 20 years. And I think a lot of bookers or people who write for wrestling should study this, how they did TNT, how they created TNT, and how they pushed him, how they made him into a star. I mean, this guy was only 21, 22 years old, and he was already in less than a month a main event star. And it just blows your mind. First, how good of a prodigy was Savio or TNT or Juan Rivera as a wrestler in that time, and also how good creative can be when everybody pitches in and sacrifice their own good to make somebody a star. That is something that we don't see in wrestling Puerto Rico nowadays. What do you think of this look at Savio Vega or TNT? I would like to listen to your comments, your favorite memories of this time in the career of Savio Vega. And in 2 weeks, we're going to continue looking at the career of Savio Vega or TNT in Capital Sports Promotions. Until then, this is your friend Luis Cuevas saying, like always, sayonara, amigos.